So welcome everyone to our ninth session here of our Growing Opportunities in Canadian Agriculture webinar series, where we'll be chatting with a diverse group of individuals from the agricultural sector. Today we have Sean from Korotu Technology Inc. Now, personally, I love technology, whether it comes from, on my smartphone, personal use technology, or a large scale application like we get to see in agriculture. And I find it absolutely fascinating. And in today's world, I know things basically seem like they're changing almost daily. So can't wait to hear what you have to share with us, Sean. So for now, let's start with a bit of an intro from you, and you can give us a little background on your company.
Yeah, thanks, Kelsey, and delighted to be here with CHRC. So I'll just introduce myself and then talk about Korotu. So my name's Sean Rudd, and I'm the founder and CEO of Korotu Technology. And I grew up in Aotearoa, New Zealand, on the west coast, in Taranaki. And I didn't grow up on a farm, but I was in a rural environment and had the benefit of parents that brought me up in a sort of outdoor space where we spent a lot of time on friends' farms. We spent a lot of time in nature, and really became pretty passionate about our natural world and looking after that and preserving that for the long term. Fast forward, university, I studied technical degrees. I got degrees in computer science and economics in my home country, and then moved internationally, and I really pursued a degree or a career in technology. So I worked for a number of software businesses over time, and then I joined a large consultancy, and I led technology projects, technology strategy projects for close to 15 years in the consulting space, but always interested in the natural world, always interested in the environment in the background, and doing various things. Like I led the employee giving scheme at one of these large consultancies, trying to direct employee funds into projects that we thought were going to make a big difference. But 2020, my wife and co-founder and I decided that we needed to do a pivot, and climate change and biodiversity loss was just such a big issue. And at this point, we had our son, and we wanted to lean into it in a way that we just couldn't do in a large corporation. So we founded Korotu, and the idea behind it was to bring remote sensing technologies to organizations and communities in Canada and internationally to allow them to address climate change and biodiversity loss more directly. And I'll talk more about the details behind that, but in a nutshell, we take data from satellites in space, we pull that down, we process it using AI, because in these conversations you have to mention AI these days, but we use various algorithms. We process that data and we produce reports for clients on things that matter about the environment. For example, the amount of carbon in a forest, or the dates of mowing on grasslands on a property. And that information is used to measure, monitor, and ultimately fund environmental initiatives in various landscapes, including, most excitingly, in agriculture. And then the last point with this is that it is a technical field, and we need some really skilled people to join us. And we've been lucky enough in partnering with CRHRC to be able to access various technical talents, often young, early stage professionals still in their undergraduate, studying a range of different fields: computer science, data science, GIS, some social sciences, and bring them in to our organization and work on agricultural and natural solutions together, and really bring that technical knowledge and apply it in a field that many people had probably not thought of before, which is, to achieve better agricultural outcomes.
Wonderful. Yeah. And like you said, not a lot of people think about, technology and ag. For me, one of my first experiences of kind of how tech kind of joined in with ag was when I was helping with standards revision in the seed sector. And one of the reasons why they had to change their standards was because new tech available in terms of seed color sorting. So, we didn't have to have these strict standards anymore because there was tech out there that was able to actually, dive through, do that separation, give more purity and more quality assurance to the industry. So it's so interesting, hearing your side and hearing all the things that you're getting into in your company. So what would you say, kind of, thinking about tech and getting into that, are the main areas where tech is becoming invaluable in agriculture?
Yeah, happy to address that. It's a big field, right? Agriculture has been a leading adopter of technology for decades. Probably you could potentially say centuries. There's agriculture has changed a lot over time, and the inclusion of more additions to the soil is really through the Green Revolution. The mechanization of our farming sector. These big changes have allowed us to produce vast amounts more food and fiber off a little bit larger landmass, but really not a great deal more landmass over time. So that this has been something that has been going on for a long period of time, and today less people work in agriculture than in our parents' generation and our parents' generation. It's a smaller number of people have been able to feed a vastly increased population on the planet. So, overall technology has been absolutely crucial to that journey. I'm going to focus on the part that I know best, which is the use of remote sensing to measure what is happening on the farm. And I think that's really interesting because we've got this great increase in food and fiber, and it's wonderful, and it's our generation benefits from that. Agriculture is a career choice for some. Others don't make other choices because we're able to produce so much more. But with climate change increasing, we're having to rethink some of those aspects around agriculture. We need to produce fiber. We need to produce food. Some of what we've produced in the past isn't going to work in a warming world, and we're going to have to adjust for that. And farmland, especially in southern Canada, where a lot of our farming takes place, we do have farming in other areas, but a lot is in southern Canada. That land provides vital other ecosystem services. Those farms sequester carbon, they store carbon, they can clean water and provide water filtration services. They provide scenic landscapes. They provide pollination services. They provide habitat, right? So those lands are absolutely crucial. So I think one of the big challenges that we're dealing with is how do we keep the benefits that we've had from agriculture and continue to improve them to maximize some of those other services that they deliver. There's other ecosystem services, and remote sensing has an absolutely vital part of that. So let me give you a couple of examples which I think are really interesting. So one took place in Prince Edward Island, and we were lucky enough to partner with a land trust in Prince Edward Island to deliver this. But they were interested in bobolink populations, which is an iconic male bobolink, the black and white back to front tuxedo. It's a bird that has decreased significantly in recent decades for a variety of reasons. Loss of habitat's been a big reason. And they breed on grasslands, and they need grasslands early in the season for breeding. But of course we need them for forage, right? Those grasslands are what feed animals that we all benefit from. So there's been various delayed hay programs which have pushed back the mowing of those to allow fledglings the breeding to take place, fledglings to develop and to be able to leave the nest and then to be able to convert to forage later in the season. And what we've done from an AI perspective and a monitoring perspective is we've used satellites that are orbiting over Prince Edward Island and orbiting other parts of Canada on a regular basis, and being able to take that data and assess it and measure when the mowing events took place. And that's been really important from a sort of monitoring perspective to see when the mowing events took place. Producers voluntarily join these programs. They choose to be part of it. They want to have the bobolink on there. They're receiving a financial incentive to be part of the program, which is great because they're providing this habitat. and we're able to monitor and assess that using technology. So that's kind of one concrete example, I think, of another one, and that's really in the monitoring space. And just one other one that I'll share is on a lot of agricultural landscapes in Canada, that they're often treed landscapes. We have shelter belts that protect the soil. There might be agroforestry where, since it's March in Canada, quite a few producers may actually be tapping sugar maple right now for maple syrup. And then you've got larger blocks of forested landscape. So those trees provide great value to those farms, and many producers love them, but they also provide great value to the community. They store the carbon and they clean the air and the water. But it's been difficult to measure them, and if you can't measure them, it's really hard to value them beyond a sort of a qualitative measure of, it's a lovely, beautiful treed landscape. So what we've been working to do, and we did this with a large agricultural producer across 4 provinces in Canada, is we use satellites to measure the woodlots on their properties. So they had croplands and they had grasslands. They also had woodlots, and we measured each of those woodlots, and we measured the heights of the trees, and we measured the amount of carbon that was being sequestered. And each individual woodlot, some of them a couple of hectares in size, isn't huge, but when you aggregate them, they're actually a really big resource. And through that opens up the potential for their agriculture producers, those farmers, to potentially monetize them, because now they've got a measured value. So, a few examples there. This is a big space, but remote sensing combined with agriculture, I think, is a really powerful way for us to maximize that food and fiber, but also maximize the ecosystem services that are being delivered by those farms, and try and provide financial incentives to farmers to really expand those services.
Well, that's super interesting. And I find too, like a lot of producers out there, they want to be involved in these kinds of things, right? People understand the importance of where ecology comes to agriculture, and all those, elements of science kind of come together. Sometimes they just need that person coming to them to be able to bring up those opportunities. That's so nice to hear about. Now we got into some of your GIS and some of those technologies that you're speaking of. Is there anything kind of new or on the horizon that you wanted to or could share about with us at your company?
Yeah, certainly, Kelsey. And maybe I'll just pick up on that point about producers. So we were lucky enough to partner with the province of Ontario and to interview quite a large number of producers. We interviewed over 100 producers about agri-environmental programs and adoption of programs. And we had some student employees with us doing that work. And one thing that stood out, there were those that adopted programs, and there was quite a few that didn't, and there was lots of good reasons why agri-environmental programs were not adopted. And I can sort of go into that, and it's on our website, and you can certainly download and read that paper if you're interested. But pretty much universally, producers cared about the land. They care about the land. They're passionate about the land. It's often why they've gone into this industry. They want to see it thrive. They want to pass it down to future generations. So I think, just picking up on your point, Kelsey, that sort of really strong environmental ethos, I think, runs strongly in this industry. And I think it's one of the exciting reasons to be in the space. But building on your specific point about technology, there's a couple of things that we're working on that we're excited about. Back in the space of Bobolink, we've been monitoring these fields from space for mowing events. But one of the things that we're working on now in the Atlantic provinces is to try and identify fields that will have the most potential for Bobolink habitat. And other smarter people than ourselves with strong biology backgrounds, and we've been lucky enough to work with some folks that really know this space well, have identified some of the characteristics that Bobolink like. And they like large fields, they like to be away from busy roads like all of us, they like to be away from wind turbines, they like to be away from forests because they're a grassland species. They don't particularly like it when you've got space for predator birds hovering above your nest. So they like these large landscapes. They also like the grass to green up early in the season, providing good shelter and cover. And there's a whole host of different things and we've been able to assess that from space, and also assess the mowing dates and use that to prioritize and target farmers that might be interested in the program and want to include. And tying that back to the sort of study that we did on why farmers are not adopting these programs. There's a lot of these programs out there. It's quite difficult to sift through them. It's quite hard to find the right program. By assessing producers who have the right landscape, we can potentially reach out to them and say, look, we've got a program that's exactly suited to your landscape. There's a financial incentive to join. Would you like to be involved? As opposed to this kind of world where it's up to the producer who, and during the growing season, producers work very long days, have to find these programs, right? It's up to them to go and find them and apply and find out if you can get through. So that prioritization of landscape and then prioritization of offers and going out to producers with, here's a program that will suit you. Would you like to be involved? I think is one thing that we're really excited about, and we're deploying that now. And the other area that that I just wanted to touch on briefly is in the use of drone technology. So we do a lot of satellite-based assessments, and for many uses, that's great. And today, many farmers will, their tractors are using GPS technology to very precisely navigate fields and others on a really systematic way. So satellite technology is great, but sometimes you need more detail. So we're deploying some technology now, which is drone-based and relatively small drones, the kind of drones that would be affordable for really any producer to acquire or collaborate with drone pilots and their neighbors to acquire these, and be able to assess properties, be able to assess every single tree on a property, for example, every tree in a hedgerow, and really quite detailed, get these individual tree assessments at fine levels of detail, cost effectively, and back to being able to access markets and being able to, there's programs for shelter belt development and restoration. There's programs for carbon sequestration. There's a number of programs, but you need data. And that data sometimes has to be really at a fine level of detail. So being able to put a tool into the hands of producers that lets them easily fly a low-cost drone across their property, gather the data, and produce a report that a funder or somebody else might use on the state of forestry on that property is something that we're really excited to be deploying.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Like you said, it's nice to be able to be kind of handed what you need, and that's one of the things too we often hear here at CARC about different programs and things in general is that people, they don't have the time. They need that support to be able to do and get involved with these initiatives that they want to be part of, but just they don't have the manpower or the ability to do that. So that's wonderful. Now, for the students that we have listening to this and who might listen to this recording after, what advice would you have for people who might be interested in like getting into some stuff that you're the drones, the GIS, or any sort of kind of tech-based ag? What advice would you give to them kind of entering the workforce?
Yeah, so we've been lucky enough because through the CARC support to have quite a few students across Canada join us, particularly in Ontario and BC. So I think there's a few things that I'd say. First of all, get involved. This is an exciting sector, right? Taking technology into the agricultural space, or more generally into the natural resources space, is really exciting. That intersection between them is something that we've had a number of people join, and they're often really surprised, and they comment that they really like it, right? They didn't realize that those engineering skills, those GIS skills, maybe even social science skills, can be applied in this industry. I mean, it's obviously great if you've gone to University of Guelph and gathered an agricultural degree, but that isn't the only way to enter. You can come in from many, and I think it's a really exciting place to play. But beyond look for an opportunity here. And I'm guessing those that have signed up for this webcast are already thinking about that. There's probably three things that I would say: hard skills, field experience, and network. So first of all, irrespective of where you're coming into the space from, you want to develop some hard skills, particularly early stage in your career. If your hard skills are in biology, make sure you master the biology courses, right? If your hard skills are in computer programming, study hard, right? Make sure that you really understand that area. And if they're in data, make sure you can really analyze the data. What we find in our field is we're taking data from farms and from forests, natural environments. We're having to interpret that data and build algorithms and code that can deal with it. You need really hard skills in that, and you need the ability to interpret the data. So, study hard, right? Those skills will be vital, and then you bring that into this sector, and that's your gift to others that know more, maybe on the farming side. Number two is get some field work. I love co-op programs. When I was a student, I didn't get as much opportunity. They weren't as prevalent in Aotearoa when I was a student several decades ago. So get out there and get these experiences, but make sure you get some field work, right? Whether it's through a formal co-op and you get to spend some time on a farm, you get to interview some producers, you get to do some hands-on work, maybe you get some time in a forest. Do that, or volunteer. The WIF program is great, for summer break to get some experience, but somehow get some field work, because as you mature in your career and get more senior, the temptation to spend more time behind your desk it grows, right? And that field work is so invaluable to really understand it. So try and find a way as a student to integrate that. And then last one I would say is, look, network. And that's not about seniority, right? It doesn't necessarily need to be the president of the local farming co-op. It doesn't need to be the CEO of a technology company. Level is irrelevant from my perspective. Build connections and get to know people and be interested in them, because those people will grow with you, right? They'll grow with you as you grow in your career, and those connections give you opportunities to do really interesting things. We've had the chance in our business to work with some amazing agricultural producers, not because we knew agriculture extremely well, but because we knew the remote sensing, and because our network brought us together, we were able to do that, and we've done that in the conservation space as well. So yeah, I would say do something in the space, build your hard skills, study hard, get some field work, and then just network, build a connection with people that you like and that you respect what they do, that do other things from you.
Yeah, and I can, for the people who joined us here, I can speak to my own experience when it comes to all those things that you just mentioned. For me personally, I started off actually working in the field doing seed crop inspection. So that was my kind of entry level. And then I utilized the networking component, and moved into working with CSGA, which was Canadian Seed Growers Association. They were the ones who were processing the reports that I was writing. So I was able to bring in my experience from being in the field, and like you said, getting that kind of grassroots on the ground exposure is so invaluable when you get into especially spaces like standards or certification, or people who perhaps might just be in like the big cities and have never been out and understand what they're actually like getting to work into. And like you said, that networking piece is becoming even more important, I think, too, with the world getting more behind a computer and less face to face. Trying to find someone that you can connect with and share passion with. It's a wonderful thing. So thank you very much. That was really wonderful. Now I'll open up to some Q&A here. We do have one that came in the chat. In Q&A. I'm not sure if this will be something that you will have an answer to, but someone's asking if AAFC, they're talking about AAFC and CFIA in terms of positions for remote sensing and GIS. I don't think the federal government is quite as involved in GIS, like in remote sensing. Would you agree? Like, I think that's done, government, I think, for the most part, set more of like the policies and the bigger like that bigger element picture, less so on the actual like functioning. Like an organization like yours is going to be the ones who's out doing that hard work, that tedious work, and that kind of component. But I'll let you add anything.
Yeah, I don't know that I can comment specifically on the policy recommendations that are coming out. They're sort of, it's an evolving space. I mean, I think but so I wouldn't comment that specific one. I mean, the use of remote sensing is certainly growing. Whether it's from satellite-based sensing to drone-based sensing, I think everybody recognizes that's really important, and we're trying to get the right guardrails around it. There are privacy concerns, there are other concerns. One of the areas in drone operations that we're really thinking about at the moment, from a scalability perspective, is flying drones beyond visual line of sight. So at the moment, many drone operators fly within line of sight. And if you're my age, you're flying a small drone, that's not that far, right? That's only a few hundred meters. So you don't cover a really big area. But flying beyond visual line of sight is an area that is being focused on. I guess that's less in the agriculture space. It's more in Transport Canada space. But that opens up new opportunities, right? So there's a regulatory change. If you can fly larger landscapes, and you can do it today, but it's quite a strict process. It may be that this will open up the ability to fly larger landscapes in safe environments, probably not over a city, but in a rural environment, being able to gather data in a much greater way, and then increasingly opening up, I think, to the idea that remote sense data can be used to answer these questions, whether it's an agricultural space or a conservation space or others. And we've seen examples where we've submitted remote sensing data packages to the government, often for the first time in a particular space, and they've been open to interpreting that data. So I think it's definitely changing. If you want to get into the nuance of the policy there, it's there's a lot going on in that space, whether it's in drone operation or what data packages are allowable to prove certain things.
Yeah, and like you said too, when you kind of touched on it earlier when we were talking about like AIs and other, right? That's a big. There's a lot of regulatory and different different areas kind of coming into play there. With different parts of the government coming out with their own policies or their own strategies around it, and it's becoming obviously more and more important. In lieu of other questions here, I thought I'd maybe ask you about how different ways that you kind of are utilizing AI. Oh, actually, I'll let someone has their hand raised here. If you want, you can just throw your question in the chat or in the Q&A, and then we can answer that for you. But yes, I would be curious if we had having time to hear your perspective or what your experience is with AI so far.
I don't see that chat, so maybe I'll just address the AI question for now. So yeah, I mean, AI is crucial to what we do. In our company, we're taking these big data sets and having to interpret them and trying to and understand what's going on. There's a couple of things that have come forward as recent examples. One of them has been just disturbance monitoring. After a big storm event comes through, out in the Atlantics, 2022, people will remember Hurricane Fiona or post-tropical storm Fiona, depending on when it. And it was a big, powerful storm, and these storms are coming up more and more, and they really impact large landscapes. And we've been using AI-based models to try and understand the impacts of those, try and work out which parts of a landscape were most impacted. And we've been able to draw some useful conclusions on that. That the tall trees get knocked down more heavily, no surprises there. But conifer-dominated landscapes are much more impacted than deciduous trees or mixed forests. So we've been able to gather that at a really large landscape and confirm that through AI models, and that could impact the future of building resilient forest systems. If you're putting up shelter belts in the future, and you're in that landscape, maybe you want to be thinking about a mixed, rather than just putting in a monoculture of a single species. Maybe you want to be putting in multiple different species. So that's an example where AI has been used to interpret these really big data sets, draw conclusions, and create some quite tangible things that you can do off the back of it. Like, we need to be thinking those storms are getting worse. We need to be thinking about planting now so that, in a generation's time, the shelter belts that protect the soil will be able to will stand up to a really, really strong storm.
Okay. The question did come in. I know we're at our time here. Do you have time for one last question? Yeah, perfect. Okay. So the question is, what are the likely limitations of using drone for gathering data?
I think I heard likely limitations of using drones for gathering data.
Yes, yeah.
So there's a couple that typically jump to mind, right? I mean, the economics of using a drone are really different from satellites. You can only cover so much space, especially if you're flying visually. So you can't gather the same amount of space. I can gather hundreds of kilometers in a day from satellite. But if I send my team out in a truck to a location and I've got a spotter and a pilot and I'm flying a quad helicopter, maybe I'm going to be gathering tens of hectares. Maybe in a good day, I'm gathering 20, 30, maybe more hectares. So that the landscape, so the amount of data that you can gather in terms of space is much reduced. Fixed wings and others beyond a visual line of sight expand it. So you're definitely losing the ability to cover really large areas. You're having to constrain that, and that's and that can be a bit of a limitation, but you're getting more data as a result. For a long time, it's been hard to gather the really detailed data that is hard to see. So I think you can observe some things from above, from space, some at drone height. Once you get into treed landscapes and you've got agroforestry systems, and once you get into the soil, it's for a long time that's been really hard to observe, and it's still hard to observe. I don't want to discount it. Some things have to be done on the ground, but that is starting to change, and there are some interesting things going on with the ability to gather data closer to the ground. But I will say, if anyone is ever thinking, in a few years, it'll be 100% technology based. We'll all sit at our desks and nobody will ever go into the field. I don't think that's going to happen. I think that what will happen in the field is going to change, but we'll always have a need for field work. That's going to be just crucial. What will happen is you'll be integrating drone technology or satellite technology to inform what you do in the field. Like, you might go out to the spot where you're most concerned about and spend your field work time there rather than scanning for it. But yeah, the drone technology is great, but it doesn't answer all questions, and we need field work.
Yeah, it's like you said, it's the integration of technology, not the replacement through technology, right? So no, that's wonderful. Well, thank you so much for your time. This is really informative. I'm sure everyone here really appreciates it. And for those of you just so you know, we have one last session popping up on Thursday if you're at all interested. And yeah, I hope everyone has a wonderful afternoon. Thank you again so much, Sean.